and welcome to Mental Health Raw and Open podcast. I'm your host, Jody, and I created the show to have honest, candid conversations about mental health in an effort to help reduce the stigma. I will issue a trigger warning before each show, as many of these topics we discuss may be highly sensitive for some. If you are having suicidal thoughts, please reach out to someone, go to a local hospital, or call a crisis line. In the United States, call 1-800-273-8255 or text 741-741. In Canada, 1-833-456-4566 or text 686868. Okay, so on today's show, we're going to do something a little different. It's National Suicide Prevention Month, and it's Suicide Awareness Day on September 10th. So I'm not having a guest on right now. I'm just going to ramble for a little bit, and if that's okay with you all. Suicide is something that has been part of my life since I can remember. My first attempt, I was 8 years old, and although I may not have understood exactly what I was doing, I did know the premise of death, and that if you weren't alive, you couldn't experience any more pain. So I took a bunch of my grandmother's high blood pressure pills and was very sick, went to the hospital, and this is way back in the day, so now you're going to know I'm old. So in the late 70s, early 80s, and suicide was not spoken of. My attempt was chalked up to be childhood misadventure, and pretty much I was sent home, and there was nothing else talked about. It was really never spoken about in my house. No one ever talked to me about it, and it was just kind of a closed topic. Since then, I have had a couple of other major attempts and a bunch of smaller overdoses. I have been lucky enough not to have to be hospitalized. I have a fear of hospitals that is greater than a fear of death, so it's just something I try and avoid at all costs. It's hard for people to talk about suicide, and I think that's something we need as a society. As individuals, we all need to change. We all have the responsibility to make that subject something that you would speak of with your kids as you would have the sex talk with them. You know, there needs to be education at a young age, and I know people are like, oh, we don't want to take our child's innocence away, and I understand that, but trust me, I grew up living almost two lives, really. One life was being a good student, playing soccer, acting happy, and doing my responsibilities as a child. The other part of me was torn apart and destroyed from, sexual abuse that happened before and was ongoing for countless numbers of years. And I think that there's no right age or wrong age. I think you know your kids best, and I think the best thing is to be honest. If they grow up with the word being part of a conversation, it's not going to be as frightening for them to bring up when or if they ever have those types of feelings, because it's going to be more commonplace. I think personally, I wouldn't have told my parents anything. My mom passed away without knowing about my one suicide attempt, and she was already dead when I had my other one, but just it wasn't a subject that was approachable. No one talked about it. I had a cousin, actually, I just kind of recalling just now, but I had a cousin way back in the day, and he hung himself, and I remember he was very young, maybe like 19 or 20, and I was told that he overdosed. And then years later, I was told that he actually killed himself. So the stigma has been there for so long, and talking about it is fantastic. It's a start. It's something we need to do, but we need to take action as well. We need to be able to see the signs. We need to be prepared if we have a friend or a family member that's going through a suicidal time, what kind of things you can do to help. It's not quite as complicated as people see. I think a lot of people think you need to have a degree or be an expert in the topic, and at the time of a suicidal crisis, which, by the way, the height of a suicidal crisis is about 10 to 20 minutes. You may be suicidal for a long time, but the height of the actual crisis, the peak of the crisis, lasts 10 to 20 minutes long. So in that 10 to 20 minutes, if someone is reaching out online or through a helpline or anyway, really, they are reaching out because they still have an iota of hope. they're still holding on to something. They still think there's something that can help them. And I deal with a lot of suicidal people, and I find most of them really just need to be heard. And I mean heard, not listened to. And there's a big difference, because we listen to speak, and that's just how we've been brought up. But to actually hear somebody, we need to silence the next comment that's coming out of our mouth. We need to silence that in our minds. We need to be purely focused on listening and hearing what those people are saying and validating their feelings and letting them know that they're not alone and sticking with them for that 10 to 20 minutes. Anyone can do it. I know it's frightening and think that you may have someone's life in your hands, but let me tell you, if you're going to kill yourself, you're not going to reach out. You're not going to reach out on Twitter. You're not going to reach out anywhere. You're beyond that point. When you are reaching out, as I said, there's still a little bit of you that believes that you can get better or something is going to get better. So you reach out and you look for someone to provide that support or that hope. And I think that people need to understand that they're equipped to do it. You can help. You can listen. You can validate. It doesn't take anything to do that. It takes nothing but kindness, and kindness is free. I think as a society in whole, we also need to address how we use the word suicide and the terms that we use. Someone killing themselves or committing suicide. Suicidal people aren't criminals, and I know in some places it's technically against the law to kill yourself, which is stupid. I don't comprehend that if someone is at a suicidal crisis and they try and kill themselves, that there should be a charge against them, or they should be spending time in jail or anything like that. It's not going to help any sort of situation. As they say, suicide is not a crime. And if we start as a society using words like died by suicide, ended their lives by suicide, instead of putting that emphasis on suicide, we're so paid attention to the word itself that we're missing all the signs that are leading up to it. And again, I'm no doctor, I'm no therapist. I'm a certified crisis worker, and I'm trained in trauma-informed peer support. You can start learning the signs, things we should start to watch out for, because they are little and they are noticeable if you know what you're looking for. And I think the more people that know, then the less people that will go unnoticed. Like some of the warning signs of suicide are, aside from the obvious, like people being depressed, people often really withdraw when they're suicidal. They shut down, they don't want to talk to anybody, they feel like they're a burden to everybody. You feel like just being alive is a burden on someone, that you're just not worth being alive, and the negative talk goes on and on. But I think aside from all the things that come with depression, the pessimism and always being sad or always bouncing around in moods, I think that the crisis point is lack of or loss of hope. We need, as human beings, we need something to hold on to. We need something to hope for or to look forward to. And if you strip a person of their confidence and their sense of self, all the pressure adds up and you become hopeless. You don't feel like anything's ever going to work, and you think that the only way to save yourself and to really save other people from you is by ending your life. I know I've been there a bunch of times. I've thought, I don't really have a family. I have no kids. I have really no responsibility to anyone but myself. So I guess I get asked a lot why I hold on, and I don't know. I don't know what keeps me going sometimes. I think sometimes it's just almost a sense of guilt that I don't want to hurt anybody. It comes down to the difference between wanting to die and wanting the pain that you're experiencing to stop. And there's a huge line in the sand between the two. Some people truly do want to die. Most people would like to live, but they do not want to live in the extreme agony and pain and horror that they live in on a daily basis. I have BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. It has the highest number of both attempted and successful rates of suicide out of all the mental illnesses. The rates are extraordinarily high. The rate of self-harm is extraordinarily high. And for me, when I get BPD-ish, I will say, basically you lose control of the rational part of your mind, and everything you see is through through an emotional view. However, it is an emotional view with a dark pair of sunglasses on. So what I mean by that is it doesn't matter if it's a sunny day or if it's beautiful or even if we're feeling well. When we take those glasses off, the world just does not look the same for us. Our lives have been so traumatic at some point, and generally with BPD, it's during early childhood trauma. The brain actually does not develop properly. You have brain scans that will show that someone with BPD, their amygdala, which is the emotion center, it's smaller. It's not functioning as it should be. It's always on high alerts. Therefore, it's always releasing hormones into your body. And by doing that, it's keeping you on alert almost 24/7. Like sometimes when I go out, like I can say that I really honestly know what's around me or who's around me at any given point in time. There's no way anyone's ever going to sneak up on me. I'm too highly alert or hypersensitive or hyper alert or whatever you want to call it. And it's a coping mechanism that has helped keep me alive. It's probably not as necessary now, but my anxiety when I'm out tells me that it is necessary. So you tend to go to the coping habits that you're familiar with, the ones that you've done for, the past 20 years or however long. Something else about suicide is people often go through a phase right before they are planning a suicidal act where they actually want to give away some of their things. So if you see a friend or family member randomly and suddenly asking anyone if they want any of their possessions or to look after an animal because they're going away for a weekend and it's just unexpectedly out of character, check in, ask. People have this thought that if you ask somebody directly about suicide, that is going to put the thought of suicide in their brain, which is absolutely false. It's so incorrect and it's very stigmatizing. Suicide is either in your brain or it's not. It's not something that someone mentions to you and then you're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, thanks, I'll go with that option. In fact, often the best thing to say is quite blunt. Are you having suicidal thoughts? Are you having suicidal feelings? And tell me more about that, how they're making you feel. What kind of impulses are you feeling? Ask directly. If you've had these feelings before, what are some of the things that you've tried to get you through the peak of your crisis? Coping techniques, distraction methods. There's a ton of information online. There's so many options, and I think often in the middle of a crisis, people can't see beyond their own darkness, and sometimes you need someone to point a light in and give you a roadmap because you can't find your way because you feel like you've been lost for so long. So ask directly. Don't be afraid. Tell your kids to ask their friends direct. There's no harm in asking. It's just a question and it can be answered by a simple yes or no, and how they answer it is how you proceed with the conversation. And again, you watch for the warning signs, you watch for the constant low moods, and you watch for the isolation or the pulling away from their friends or feeling so pessimistic about everything, not eating much, not sleeping well. Some people have increased drug or alcohol use or start drug or alcohol use. I know with BPD it is a huge problem. Impulsiveness is ridiculous. It is incredibly hard to control with BPD, and that goes back to the emotional mind shutting down the rational mind. And a lot of people with BPD cope in very impulsive ways: self-harm, gambling, alcohol, drugs, sex, a lot really. BPD is just one of those illnesses. So again, ask your friends, check on your friends, check on your strong friends. Sometimes the people who are helping people most are the ones that are ready to crack. Check on your family members. Listen to people if they are saying things about suicide. They're reaching out in the way that they know how, and it's okay to not know how to respond or be uncomfortable responding, but it is possible. So don't shut it out of your mind like you won't be able to do it, because I'm telling you, anybody can help. It's just a matter of wanting to. Now, Suicide Prevention Day on Tuesday, it's going to up the conversation. The conversation's going to be hyped all day. It's going to be pumped all over social media, and people are going to talk about it. And because September is Suicide Prevention Month. We're going to talk about it and promote it for that month. And then what happens is the talk dies down. And that's not something that can happen. We need to keep the conversation up daily, and we need to keep the volume on the conversation turned up loud. And for those of you out there who are dealing with suicidal thoughts or ideations, I've been passively suicidal for 40 years and actively suicidal many times. And I want you to know that I do know how you feel. I do understand the emptiness and the hopelessness and feeling like you're unwanted and unlovable. I get it. I'm personally not big on people saying, oh, hang on, everything's going to get better. Some shit might not get better. That's just a fact of life. However, you're going to change. You're going to grow. You're going to get stronger. If you're willing to, you're going to learn different coping mechanisms and different coping skills that are going to help you reach out or cope during these times of crisis. And basically, you have to replace a negative habit with a positive one. And the only way to do that is with active repetition. It's the same way that you can remember a song from 20 years ago and sing all the words because you heard it so many fucking times that it's drilled in your head. And 20 years later, those words are still there. It's the same with negative words. Those words that were spoken to us as children that may have been hateful or harsh, we remember those words clearly, like they were said yesterday. And they don't go away. They've left an imprint like a tattoo on our brain. What we have to do is, again, replace it with something positive. So if cutting is your go-to mechanism, for example, when you're at a high point of crisis or depression or anxiety, there's a million other things you can try to find what works for you and keep trying until you do find, because I promise something will work. There's so many different coping techniques. There's grounding techniques. They're easily and readily available online. 54321 grounding technique is fantastic for anybody. Depression, anxiety, suicide, stupid little things like do the alphabet backwards, try and take weird number, let's say like 128, and start subtracting by threes. These kind of tasks require both sides of your brain to cooperate to get them done. And when that happens, that can then quell and quiet the noise of the amygdala, which is producing the emotional response that you're having at the time. I've been on both ends of suicide. Obviously, as I said, I've tried a few times. I'm not very good at it. And I've lost quite a few friends dead by suicide. And I'm not going to tell you to, hang on because of this or hang on because of that. I'm going to tell you to hang on to whatever the hell you can find to hang on to. A pet, a friend, a thought of something good happening. Reach out to a crisis line and just have somebody listen to you. Because we all know the more that you bottle things up, the higher the chance that you're going to explode. So I want to tell you, when you're feeling suicidal, when you're having these dark thoughts, I want you to remember that no matter what you think or how you feel at the time, they will not last forever. They will come and go, but they won't last consistently forever. And as you grow as a person, you will see that, and you're just gonna have to take my word for it. It's just something I think that I have a lot of experience, and of course it's not the same for everybody, but when it comes right down to it, when you are at the point of ending your life, you truly are at rock bottom. There is no further you can sink. You feel like not only are you at rock bottom, but people have piled rocks on top of you. So there's no escape. There's no other chance or hope or moment that you think that you're going to get peace unless you die. And I want you to know that hang on for 10-20 minutes. Do whatever you can. Go for a walk, beat up your pillow, rip apart a pillow, go outside and take a stick and beat it on a tree. There's so many ways to get out this rage during the suicidal period, and I just really want people to know that reach out. It's so important. People think, they have to have courage to commit suicide. No, you really don't. You have to have courage to get up every day, face the day, go through all your shit, and then get up the next day and repeat that for years. That is what takes courage. And I know that the people listening that are suicidal, I want you to know that you have that courage in you and you have that strength in you, and you may not see it and you may not feel it, but I promise you there is a reserve of strength in everyone that they don't know is there until they absolutely need it. And at that point of time when you're suicidal is when you need that. And that's another thing that you can try and hold on to. Suicide rates are through the roof and they keep rising. And again, none of this is going to end without education at all levels. And it needs to start in educational system. It needs to be in police department. It needs to be everywhere. It needs to be an open conversation everywhere. And the only way that we can do that is if everyone listening talks about it. Tell a friend and tell them to tell a friend. That's the only way. Word of mouth is the best way to get things across. So again, I just want everyone to know that you're not alone in the way that you're feeling when you're suicidal. There are a lot of other people who have felt the same or at that same time are feeling exactly the same. And I want you to take a minute and pick up a phone, get online, reach out to a friend. Twitter has a fantastic mental health community. There's a hashtag called Sick Not Weak, which has a very, very large support group. If you add that hashtag to your tweet, I promise you there will be a few people at the very least that will reach out and hold your hand or sit with you during your crisis. So basically you have one thing to focus on. When you become suicidal, the one thing you need to focus on is reach out. That's it. Reach out anywhere you can, because your life is worth it. You're invaluable. You bring a gift to the world that no one else brings to the world, just because you're you. And everyone is different and everyone brings their own unique individuality, and that's needed in the world, and you're needed in the world. So please stay safe. Do your best to stay safe. Everyone knows my Twitter DM is always open at OneLastKick71. You can reach me there anytime. I will always get back to you. I might be sleeping if we're on opposite sides of the world, but I promise as soon as I get up I will reply. And I just need you to keep thinking in your head every time you say suicide, you say reach out. So the two become linked. Suicide, reach out. Suicide, reach out. Anyway, I've blabbed on for so long now. I'm gonna go. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to this, and I hope that together we can make a big change. We can keep pushing the momentum forward and educate, and it's the only way to solve ignorance is by education. So until next time, I hope you all take good care of yourselves, be well, stay strong, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me rambling on about suicide. Again, say the word, have the conversation. Check in with your friends, check in with yourself. Know that you're loved, you're needed, and you're wanted, and you're worthy. Okay, that's it. So have a fantastic day, everyone, and take good care of yourself.